In a bustling American auditorium, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation as a passionate Biarawati stood at the center of the stage, her voice echoing through the room. With fiery conviction, she hurled accusations against Islam, tearing pages from a sacred text to emphasize her disdain. Her challenge rang out like a gauntlet thrown. If your God is real, prove it. Little did she know, her words would spark a dialogue that went far beyond mere debate. A young man from the audience rose to meet her challenge, his calm demeanor masking a heart burning with resolve. As truths unfolded and questions pierced the core of faith, the stage became both a battleground of ideas and a bridge toward understanding. Could this exchange turn hatred into humility, doubt into devotion, and conflict into connection? The world watched, waiting for answers that transcended religion itself. In the heart of an American city, under the bright fluorescent lights of a grand auditorium filled to capacity with spectators from all walks of life, tension hung thick in the air like an unspoken storm. A Biarawati named Maria stood at the center stage, her presence commanding and her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Her face flushed with emotion, she unleashed words that pierced not just the ears, but the very souls of those who listened. Why do Muslims worship a God they cannot see? Why does their religion condone violence? She thundered, each syllable dripping with disdain. In front of her lay a tattered copy of the Quran, its pages now scattered across the floor as if it were nothing more than scraps of paper. With trembling hands, Maria had torn apart the sacred text moments earlier, igniting gasps of shock and murmurs of outrage among the crowd. The room was divided. Some applauded her boldness, while others recoiled in horror. Among the latter sat Umar, a young Muslim man whose eyes burned with a mix of anger and sorrow. His fingers gripped the edge of his chair tightly, knuckles turning white. Yet amidst the chaos swirling around him, Umar's mind raced, not with thoughts of retaliation, but with determination to defend his faith. Rising slowly from his seat, he raised his hand into the air, signaling his desire to speak. The moderator nodded hesitantly, unsure of what awaited them next. As Umar stepped forward onto the stage, every pair of eyes turned toward him. Some braced themselves for conflict, others hoped for clarity. But what unfolded would change everything, for Maria, for Umar, and perhaps even for the world beyond the walls of that auditorium. Maria sneered slightly, her initial arrogance still intact. "Ah, so we have someone willing to take up this challenge," she said mockingly, gesturing toward the torn pages on the ground. "Let's hear your defense, then." Her tone carried no warmth, only hostility, but Umar did not falter. Instead, he exhaled deeply, allowing himself a moment to collect his thoughts before addressing her directly. His voice, calm yet firm, echoed throughout the vast space. "Sister Maria," he began, using her title out of respect despite her earlier actions. "I accept your invitation to discuss these matters openly. However, let us approach this dialogue not with hatred or insults, but with understanding and truth." For a brief second, Maria seemed taken aback by his composure, though she quickly masked it with another scowl. And thus, the debate commenced, a clash of ideologies, emotions, and ultimately, hearts. Maria wasted no time launching her first attack. Leaning forward with both hands planted firmly on the podium, she fired her opening salvo. "Why do Muslims travel thousands of miles to Mecca simply to bow down to a black stone? Isn't that idolatry in disguise?" Her question rang out like a gauntlet thrown down, daring Umar to respond. Many in the audience leaned forward in anticipation, curious to see how he would handle such a loaded accusation. Umar smiled faintly, not out of amusement, but out of pity for the misunderstanding behind her words. Taking a deep breath, he began his explanation carefully, ensuring each word resonated with sincerity. "Sister Maria," he started softly, "you misunderstand the purpose of Hajj entirely. The Kaaba is not something we worship. It is a symbol, a focal point for unity in our worship of Allah, the one true God. He paused briefly, letting his statement sink in before continuing. Historically speaking, Umar elaborated, raising his voice slightly to emphasize his point. The Kaaba was built by Prophet Abraham, and his son, Ishmael, as the first house dedicated solely to the worship of one God. This act laid the foundation for monotheism itself. Allah mentions this clearly in the Quran, Surah Al-Imran, verse 96, and, remember, when we made the house, the Kaaba in Makkah, a place of return for mankind and a place of safety. When Muslims circumambulate the Kaaba during Hajj, we are not worshipping the structure itself. Rather, we are acknowledging the covenant made by Abraham to serve none other than Allah. As Umar spoke, his voice carried a quiet authority that silenced even the most skeptical listeners. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, pocket-sized Quran, flipping through its pages until he found the relevant verses. Holding it up for everyone to see, he recited aloud, "Indeed, the first house established for mankind was that at Makkah, blessed and guidance for the worlds." Each word fell like drops of rain, soothing the heated atmosphere that had enveloped the auditorium mere minutes ago. Maria shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her initial confidence beginning to waver. She opened her mouth to retort, but Umar gently interjected. "If I may add," he continued, "the Kaaba represents humility and submission to God. It reminds us that regardless of where we come from or what language we speak, we are all equal before Him. That is the essence of Hajj, not idolatry, but devotion." By the time Umar finished speaking, several members of the audience were visibly moved, some wiping away tears, while others nodded in agreement. Even Maria appeared momentarily subdued, though her pride refused to let her admit defeat just yet. Undeterred, Maria pressed onward, determined to regain control of the conversation. "Very well," she said, her voice regaining some of its earlier sharpness. "But let me ask you this. What proof do you have that your God actually exists? If He is real, why can't you show Him to me right here, right now?" Her challenge hung in the air like a dare, challenging Umar to provide evidence for something intangible and unseen. For a moment, Umar closed his eyes, collecting his thoughts. Then, opening them again, he looked straight at Maria with a gaze that conveyed both compassion and conviction. "Sister Maria," he began, choosing his words deliberately, "God is beyond human perception. He transcends physical form and material existence. To demand that He appear before us is akin to asking a painter to step inside his own painting. It defies logic and diminishes His greatness." He paused dramatically, allowing his words to settle over the audience before continuing. "However," he added, his voice growing stronger, "the universe itself bears witness to His existence. Look around you, the stars in the sky, the oceans, covering the earth, the intricate design of every living creature, all point to a Creator far greater than ourselves. In the Quran, Allah asks us to reflect upon His signs. Surah Ar-Rum verse 30 states, "Then look at the signs of Allah's mercy, how He gives life to the earth after its death, every sunrise, every blooming flower, every heartbeat. Isn't that proof enough?" To drive his point home, Umar recounted stories from Islamic tradition about nature's testimony to God's power. "Consider the mountains standing firm upon the earth," he explained passionately, gesturing with his hands for emphasis. "They prevent the land from shifting uncontrollably, providing stability for life to flourish. Or think of the oceans. They never overflow onto dry land thanks to barriers set by God Himself. These are not coincidences. They are deliberate acts of creation designed to inspire awe and gratitude." Maria frowned, clearly struggling to counter Umar's arguments. "But how do you know it's your God who created all this?" she finally managed to ask, her tone wavering slightly. Umar smiled gently, leaning forward slightly. "Because the Quran tells us so," he replied simply. "It challenges skeptics to produce a single chapter like it, if they can. No one has been able to do so in 14 centuries. Doesn't that suggest divine origin?" His words left Maria speechless once more, prompting murmurs of approval from the audience. Some exchanged glances, marveling at Umar's ability to articulate complex theological concepts so clearly. Others clapped quietly, recognizing the depth of his knowledge and wisdom. Still unwilling to concede, Maria launched her final volley. "All right," she conceded reluctantly, though her tone remained defiant. "But what about terrorism? How can you deny that many terrorists claim to act in the name of Islam? Isn't that proof that your religion promotes violence?" Her question struck a nerve, eliciting audible gasps from the audience. Several heads turned toward Umar, waiting anxiously for his response. Taking a deep breath, Umar met Maria's gaze head-on, his expression unwavering. "Terrorism," he began steadily, "is a perversion of any religion, not just Islam. Those who commit such atrocities misinterpret sacred texts to justify their actions, twisting words meant for peace into tools of destruction." He paused, allowing his frustration to surface briefly before continuing. "Let me be clear. Islam condemns violence categorically. The Quran explicitly forbids killing innocent people. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 32, it states, 'Whoever kills a soul, it is as if he has slain mankind entirely.' Could anything be clearer than that?" Umar's voice rose slightly, fueled by passion but tempered by reason. "These individuals," he emphasized, pointing a finger for effect, "do not represent true Islam. They distort its teachings for personal gain or political agendas. Real Muslims, billions of us worldwide, live peaceful lives, contributing positively to society. We build schools, hospitals, and communities based on love, compassion, and justice." To illustrate his point further, Umar shared examples of Muslims working tirelessly to promote harmony and coexistence. "Think of Malala Yousafzai," he suggested, his voice softening with admiration. "A young girl who risked her life defending education for girls against extremists. Or Dr. Aziz Sachedina, who dedicates his career to fostering interfaith dialogue. These are the faces of Islam, not bombers or killers." By the time Umar concluded, the entire auditorium was silent, save for the occasional sniffle or sigh. Maria stared at him, her lips parted slightly in disbelief. For the first time since the debate began, doubt flickered in her eyes. Though she tried to maintain her composure, it was clear that Umar's words had struck a chord deep within her soul. And as the audience erupted into applause, marking the end of the first round of questions, both participants, and perhaps the world itself, were forever changed. As the echoes of applause faded, Umar took a deep breath and looked directly at Maria with an expression that was neither confrontational nor condescending, but one of genuine curiosity. "Sister Maria," he began softly, his voice carrying the weight of both respect and challenge, "I have answered your questions to the best of my ability, guided by the teachings of Islam. Now, I would like to pose 3 questions to you, questions that lie at the heart of Christianity's central tenets." The room fell silent once more, every pair of eyes fixed on the 2 figures standing face to face on the stage. Umar paused for a moment, letting the gravity of the moment settle over the audience before continuing. "First," he said, his tone deliberate and measured, "why did Jesus die on the cross? Who crucified him, and why?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. He glanced briefly at Maria, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her earlier confidence visibly shaken. Was it God himself who allowed this suffering, or were there forces beyond his control? Umar pressed gently, his words laced with a quiet intensity. The second question followed swiftly, leaving little room for evasion. Did Jesus ever explicitly claim to be God during his lifetime? Umar asked, leaning slightly forward as if emphasizing the importance of the query. Or was this interpretation added later by others seeking to elevate him to divine status? His voice carried no malice, only a sincere desire for clarity. The audience listened intently, some whispering among themselves, while others leaned forward in anticipation of Maria's response. Finally, Umar delivered his third and most profound question. Is Jesus God, or is he merely a human being, an extraordinary prophet sent to guide humanity? He paused dramatically, allowing the full weight of his words to sink in. If he is indeed God, then how can a mortal man suffer death and resurrection? And if he is only a man, then what makes him worthy of worship? As he finished speaking, the auditorium seemed to hold its collective breath. For the first time since the debate began, Maria found herself at a loss for words. Her initial attempts to respond were halting and uncertain, her arguments faltering under the scrutiny of Umar's carefully crafted questions. She cited passages from the Bible, but even she appeared unsure of their meaning. The audience could sense her struggle, and murmurs rippled through the crowd as people exchanged glances of confusion and intrigue. Umar watched her silently, not with triumph, but with compassion, a recognition that perhaps, beneath her defiance, lay a soul searching for answers. Maria tried valiantly to defend her beliefs, quoting verses from the New Testament and invoking centuries-old doctrines. Yet, as she spoke, her explanations grew increasingly vague and inconsistent. Jesus died for our sins, she asserted firmly, though her voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. He willingly sacrificed himself to redeem humanity. But when pressed further about whether Jesus himself claimed divinity, she hesitated, her brow furrowing in thought. Didn't Jesus say, "I and the Father are one"? She countered, citing John 10:30. Umar nodded slowly, acknowledging her point without dismissing it outright. Yes, he replied calmly, but let us examine the context of those words. In the same chapter, Jesus also says, "My Father is greater than I." How do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory statements? Is it possible that later interpretations elevated Jesus beyond his intended role as a prophet? Maria faltered, her argument losing momentum with each passing second. When Umar posed his final question, "Is Jesus God or man?" she remained silent for so long that the silence itself became deafening. Some members of the audience whispered prayers, while others simply stared in awe at the unfolding drama. For the first time, Maria looked vulnerable, not angry, not defiant, but genuinely conflicted. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to articulate a coherent response. I don't know," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The admission shocked many in the room, including herself. Her pride, once a fortress shielding her from doubt, now crumbled under the weight of Umar's probing questions. She sank back into her chair, her head bowed low as if confronting truths she had long avoided. The audience watched in stunned silence, some moved to tears by the raw emotion playing out before them. It was a rare moment of vulnerability where dogma gave way to honest introspection. Umar, sensing her turmoil, stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to seek truth," he said softly, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. "In fact, it's essential." Days passed after the debate, yet the memory of that night lingered in Maria's mind like a haunting melody. She spent countless hours poring over religious texts, comparing the Quran with the Bible and reflecting deeply on Umar's words. Slowly but surely, doubts began to surface. Doubts not born of skepticism, but of a growing awareness that perhaps she had misunderstood fundamental aspects of her faith. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city skyline, Maria made a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. Accompanied by a small group of friends, she returned to the same auditorium where the debate had taken place. This time, however, she came not as an adversary, but as a seeker of truth. Umar greeted her warmly, his smile radiating kindness and acceptance. "I've come to learn more about Islam," Maria confessed, her voice trembling with emotion. "After everything that happened, I realized I need to understand your perspective better. Maybe there's something I've been missing all along." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke, unashamed and unguarded. Umar listened attentively, nodding occasionally as she poured out her heart. Over the following weeks, Maria immersed herself in the study of Islam, attending lectures, reading books, and engaging in thoughtful discussions with Umar and other Muslims. With each passing day, her appreciation for the religion deepened. She marveled at the Quran's eloquence, its emphasis on justice and mercy, and its call to worship one God alone. Gradually, the pieces fell into place, and what had once seemed foreign now felt strangely familiar. On a crisp morning several months later, Maria stood before a gathering of Muslims and non-Muslims alike, her face radiant with joy. Clad in modest attire, she recited the Shahada, the declaration of faith, with unwavering conviction. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Cheers erupted from the crowd, mingling with tears of happiness and pride. Umar embraced her warmly, his heart swelling with gratitude for having played a part in her journey toward truth. Maria's conversion sent ripples throughout the community, inspiring others to reconsider their own beliefs and engage in meaningful dialogue. For her, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by anger or arrogance, but by humility and faith. In the aftermath of that fateful debate, a powerful lesson emerged, one that transcended religious boundaries and touched the very essence of human interaction. The exchange between Umar and Maria demonstrated that true victory lies not in defeating an opponent, but in fostering understanding and bridging divides. It showed that debates, when conducted with wisdom and empathy, can transform adversaries into allies, skeptics into seekers, and misunderstandings into moments of clarity. Umar's approach exemplified the Islamic principle of al-hikmah wa al-mawizatu, hasana, engaging others with wisdom and good counsel. Rather than resorting to anger or hostility, he chose to address Maria's challenges with patience, evidence, and respect. His actions reminded everyone present that knowledge, when shared kindly, has the power to heal wounds and mend fractured relationships. For Maria, the experience was transformative. What had begun as a confrontation rooted in prejudice ended as a journey toward enlightenment. Through her interactions with Umar, she discovered a faith that resonated deeply with her soul, a faith that emphasized unity, compassion, and devotion to one God. Her transformation served as a testament to the universal appeal of truth and the enduring impact of sincere dialogue. As the story spread beyond the walls of the auditorium, it inspired countless others to reflect on their own beliefs and prejudices. People from different backgrounds began reaching out to one another, eager to learn and grow together. Schools organized interfaith forums, communities hosted cultural exchanges, and friendships blossomed across religious lines. The ripple effect of Umar and Maria's encounter proved that even in times of division, hope and harmony can prevail. And so, the debate did not end with a winner or loser. It culminated in a shared victory for humanity, reminding us all that the pursuit of truth is a journey best traveled hand in hand.